And very important thing to take note of. I moved my line infantry up and took a volley from the Austrian line infantry because I did not want to see my winged hussars take a volley from the line infantry. So once that line infantry was set up and their firing arcs were squaring off against my infantry, I was more than happy to get my winged hussars in there, knowing that they would be able to operate with impunity to some extent. And here they go, carrying on into the Austrian Jaegers. Here he is having a bit of a tough time with my 2 units of line infantry. Now, this may seem like a bit of a toss-up on this flank, but in reality, that is the heart of his army. Whatever I can whittle down there with what I have out there is going to work out in my favor, because as you notice, my 3 units of guards are still being held back in reserve. He's countercharged my unit of winged hussars, and I pulled him out, having brought his cavalry within range of my riflemen. A lot of these maneuvers need to work together. For example, you noticed a moment ago with my line infantry essentially opening a road for my cavalry and becoming the target for the enemy infantry to fire at on my. I apologize, had a bit of a technical issue there in the recording of the audio. I will carry on. As I was saying, it's very important to have your units work together. That unit of Grenzers was proving to be quite troublesome, so I knew I needed to get the cavalry into it. I did not want the cavalry to take a volley from the enemy infantry, so I had my infantry take the volley, and I got my cavalry into that unit of Grenzers. With the unit of Grenzers taken out on this flank, it was going to make work much easier for my riflemen. Here I am taking a volley from enemy cavalry into my riflemen, because in my offensive maneuver I've moved the cavalry from this flank over into that center where I was getting into the enemy Jaegers, and I did unfortunately lose a unit of riflemen, or a fair number of men in that rifleman unit. But as you notice over here, I've pretty much wiped out the enemy Jaegers with the help of my winged hussars in that charge, which brought them over from that far flank. Now at this stage, this guy is pretty much up on the ropes. He's lost his long-range units. His line infantry have taken a bit of a pounding. Lost some men in that unit of line infantry, which took a volley as they closed in. But at the end of the day, I still have my guards who are completely fresh. Everything up until this stage was just a warm-up, just to kind of to set the battle for that final strike with my guards. And here I am setting up just that. I bring the riflemen up to the flank, bringing my guards back into focus, and a unit of fresh winged hussars, as you will notice, waiting patiently for their chance to get involved. Very good point to make about winged hussars is they intimidate nearby enemy, which means that if you have a unit of weakened enemy infantry that's engaged and you land a lance charge from a unit of winged hussars, who themselves have a very strong lance charge, it's going to do twice the work of a normal lancer charge to get that enemy unit to rout. Because not only are the enemy units flanked and taking a charge, but they're taking a charge from a unit which is intimidating them, which is going to drop their morale that much more so. Now at this stage of the battle, with a combination of my riflemen and my cavalry working to take out his most threatening units, notably the cavalry and the Jaegers, and the Grenzer to a lesser extent, I've got very little in the field that can deal with my cavalry or my riflemen. But because he's taking a bit of an aggressive stance, I decided not to pull out too much further, just because the pathfinding at this stage in the game is it's a little bit troublesome. So, I really don't need to make things any more difficult for him than they already are. Just going to soften down his line infantry a little bit more before I bring my guards in for that final fatal volley. And at this stage, I think he kind of knows it as well, but he's still got a little bit of hope left because, well, what do you have if you don't have hope? Now there I am taking pot shots at some of his cavalry on the far side. I've set up my line on this near side, getting them in range to initiate the closer range volleys. Because at some point I will need to get this into closer range volleys, and you'll notice on this far side he initiates a cavalry charge. My winged hussars take that as their cue to get involved. Now I've moved up my line infantry because I do not want his line infantry to turn and get a volley off into the winged hussars, who are going to turn that enemy cavalry around pretty quickly. Now my guards set up on higher ground with greater numbers. They're going to make very short work of that enemy infantry, and you notice that unit on the far flank is the first to go. That's because I led with that unit of line infantry on that far side. And I mentioned at the start of this entire game that a lot of times games can be won and lost before anything's even happened, and this was kind of one of those games. Having 6 units of riflemen was going to be extremely tough for him to deal with. How could he have dealt with it if he'd used his cavalry a little bit more intelligently? If he had made better use of the woods and his own long-range skirmishers, that most definitely could have helped. The game is not unwinnable if you have a superior number of enemy long-range units, but it will make it much more challenging. Now here on this flank, I've gotten tied up with this general with my winged hussars, and here you see a bit of jockeying around, just kind of poking each other and whatnot. But in my style of play, I don't usually like to take too many losses. If it's possible, I will kill the enemy units without losing too many of my own. So you notice in the background I'm moving up my my units of infantry, and I will keep my winged hussars healthy. Now in 1v1 it doesn't really matter, but in team games it's very important to be able to give your allies as many men as you possibly can. So here his general unit is taking volleys and dying. Quite a horrible death. No, the game ends before he dies. Bit of a shame. Would have been nice to mount his head on the trophy wall, but that was not to be. Here are the final stats, and trying to minimize my casualties, I still took quite a few losses. Nothing too significant. I hit the field with more men than he did, I believe, and took considerably fewer casualties than he did. Alrighty, well that's it for me. Again, I'm Lone Soldier of the Urkani clan, and I hope you enjoyed listening to this Gamecast. You can find other Gamecasts much like this one, and a great deal more info about the game and just general discussion on our site. The site, again, is gamereplays.org, and you can find the portal by browsing through the portals and looking for the Empire Total War portal. Or you can access us directly at www.emptw.com. I encourage everyone to check it out because there is a lot of great stuff there. So, take care and good gaming.